Some of you may be too young to remember, but on today's podcast, we're going to have representatives from the 1980 U.S. Olympic hockey team, Miracle on Ice. We're going to have Captain Mike Eurozione, defenseman Jack O'Callahan, and forward Dave Silk, all from around the city of Boston, who were able to make history in beating the Russians and being able to advance onto the gold medal victory in Lake Placid, New York in 1980. Let's get into it.
I'm Sean O'Brien, General President of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters.
Put your helmets on, buckle your chin straps. It's a full contact sport.
We're going to find out who has a better bad idea.
Someone asked me once, how would we do against the next Olympic team? And I said, we'd get killed. And like, what do you mean you get killed? I said, we're in our 60s. we couldn't play against them.
No, it's good. I mean, 45 years. I mean, I remember growing up as a child, and I was talking to my mother yesterday, and when you played the Russians, it's like every big event in life, you remember where you were. I was 8 years old, and my brother was 7, and my older brother was 10, going to be 11. And we were all sitting in my mother's bedroom because she had the 13-inch colored TV, and that's the only one we had at the time, 1980. We had some black and whites, but the colored TV probably fell off the back of a truck and ended up in my mother's bedroom. But I remember watching that game and, not realizing the significance of what was going to happen the following game. But, you're all from Massachusetts. Mike's from Winthrop. What's Winthrop like?
It's a hidden gem. Winthrop's great. I love it there. My kids live there. 2 of my kids live there.
And you grew up there your entire life?
I lived 2 houses from the house I grew up in. My wife grew up 4 houses from me. So I've been there about 70 years.
Right, so you've never left?
No reason.
Went to a high school, public high school there?
Yep.
And then
Went to Winthrop High.
Played hockey at Boston University?
Played hockey at BU with Jack and Dave.
There's a great story that I read about you, that Boston University wasn't your first choice, and the school that you were going to go to, the coach didn't remember your name?
Yeah, that's not that's a good story, but that's not the reason. I ended up at BU, and just a strange coincidence. I was going to Merrimack. They were Division III school, and I wanted to go to UNH. I wanted to play football and hockey and baseball, and UNH didn't think I was a Division I player, so I'm going to Merrimack. They were Division III. In the summer, I played baseball in the summer, so I got a call from a friend of mine. There was a summer league game. Do you want to play? We need a guy. I said, I'll play. So I played in the game. And it turned out the guy that was refereeing the game was this guy named Jack Parker. I didn't know who Jack Parker was. And when the game was over, Jack came over and introduced himself. Said, we have a kid from Canada, decided not to come. Would you like to come to Boston University? And I said, I think so. I said, but it has to be a full scholarship. And it was $3,500 my freshman year. And I said, my dad can't afford that. He says, no, it's a full scholarship. So that's how I ended up at Boston University. And then Jack was the assistant coach, and head coach got fired right before Christmas, and Jack became the head coach.
Did he act up at the Christmas party? Is that why he got fired?
It was recruiting violations. Back in those days, you couldn't have, a couple of Canadian kids were there and shouldn't have been there. It was really kind of crazy.
So you grew up a pretty blue-collar lifestyle.
Oh, very much so. My dad worked 3 jobs. My dad worked at the Watertown Arsenal originally, then the Charlestown Navy Yard, then the Deer Island Sewage Treatment Plant. He was a waiter at Santarpio's for over 50 years, and then on the weekends he would help out a friend of his as a welder.
Wow.
And my mother stood home and took care of 6 kids.
Just trying to make ends meet.
That's just the way it was.
Right. And Dave, you grew up in Scituate, the mean streets of Scituate, Mass.
Yeah, Swamp Yankee. Yeah. So sure. We, my mother and father, when I was a kid, moved around the city. We started in Wellington Hill and Mattapan, and moved around a couple places, and ended up down in Scituate. And yeah.
And your mom was a nurse?
Mom was a nurse. She started at the old Boston City Hospital in the emergency room. Right. My dad died when I was young, and so she went and got a nursing degree, and she dropped me off at the local hockey rink on the South Shore in Cohasset when she went into to go to nursing school or go to BCH, and so I was a rink rat.
I think we were all rink rats at some point. You went to Thayer Academy.
yeah.
Allegedly.
You showed up there a couple times?
Once or twice. Our Jack Parker likes to kid me and say, Dave, give me the list of high schools that you went to in alphabetical order. Just think about it as a memory exercise.
So were you just trying out high schools back then to see what you liked? Or?
Yeah, it was kind of I was mishandled.
Mishandled?
Yeah.
I've been overserved a couple times. Is that the same thing?
That too.
And so you went to BU on a full scholarship.
Went to BU on a full scholarship, played 3 years there, and then took the senior year off to play on the Olympic team.
So you drafted right out of high school?
Drafted after my sophomore year.
And you were drafted
BU,
by the New York
by
Rangers?
the Rangers.
Right.
Fourth round.
What was that like?
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, what's not to like? It was just terrific, just great. It was 3 years was enough college, I think, for me, and so I was fortunate to turn pro right after the Olympics. And
you eventually got your degree from Boston University and your master's?
Went back, yep, went back and finished up and ended up getting an MBA from there years later as well, so. Yeah.
Jack O'Callahan.
Silky forgot to say when he went to play for the Rangers after the Olympic team, who his centerman was. Phil Esposito.
How was it playing with Phil Esposito?
It was a trip.
It had to be.
That locker room must have been being around your dinner table or something. You don't want to piss the old man off.
Yeah, no. It was Phil's team for sure, and it was. But and then I had Herb.
So you're 22 years old. You're in the locker room with Phil Esposito, who was probably close to 40, 35, 40.
I went to camp with Phil, so I know. I went to the Rangers camp when Phil was there.
And I know everybody's probably wondering, what was it like showering with him?
So in the Rangers,
I was only kidding, but please answer.
In the Rangers locker room, there was the main locker room, and then the trainer's table, and the medical room, and then on the other side there was a player's lounge, and back then in the old days, guys would routinely go right. They'd finish the game and then go right into the players' lounge, and they had like a hot buffet and wine and beer and so to answer your question, Espo was busy having the buffet and having a glass of red after the game, so I was showered and out of the room before he ever got back in. So I don't remember.
So the treatment back then compared to today was a lot different. Very different. The buffet and the drinks and everything has been replaced by cold plunges and hot tubs and
blenders and protein shakes and
So Jack, I think we know a lot about each other.
A little bit.
Come from some of the same lineage.
Walk the same streets.
We did. Now, fan favorite always. I can remember watching that game, and I remember my mother saying, "I know his mother, and I know his family, and he's from Charlestown," and on and on and on. And once she said you were from Charlestown, it was like my two brothers and I, we were huge fans.
The O apostrophe might have had something to do with it too.
Yeah. We thought at that point in time, we know someone famous, and we never met you. But because my mother knew your mother, we were like, oh yeah, we know Jack O'Callahan. We were going to school telling people Jack O'Callahan's good friends. I think by April of 1980, I think you were at our dinner table a couple of times, which was clearly a lie, but it sounded great. But I know you went to Boston Latin. You grew up in a blue-collar city, Charlestown, Mass., which is world famous.
Yeah, it's the hub of the universe.
Yeah. What was it like growing up in Charlestown?
It was great. It was, it was great. So you get a lot of different feedback from people, Charlestown back in the day, the movie The Town, bank robbers, people dressed up like nuns with machine guns. I never saw that, But, the people in my town they were hard workers. Everybody was union guy pretty much, the New England Teamsters were at one end of the town, International Longshoremen's with the other end of the town. And in between, 1 square mile, and in between were, my dad was an electrician. My uncle was a, carpenter, builder, firemen, cops, teachers, plumbers, I mean, all that. And then, gangsters, bank robbers, so, I mean, they had a job too, I mean, they were just doing their job, really. We all knew who they were.
You know what fascinated me about the longshoremen, and I had a couple of cousins, their grandfather was a longshoreman, and we knew a ton of kids that their parents or grandparents were longshoremen. It always fascinated me how those kids got all the same shit for Christmas.
They did. Came from the same container. Which was great. I mean, it was like, that was the way it was, right? It was just a blue collar place where everybody had a job, everybody worked extra jobs, like if you worked, like my dad worked for the utility, Boston Edison, but on weekends, he was dragging me to put services in 3-family houses in Charlestown that my Uncle Bill was renovating, so I'd be crawling around the eaves, dragging wires and stuff. And I think was when I first decided that I'm definitely going to college.
Physical labor.
No, it wasn't the physical labor. It was crawling through the eaves with rats and stuff. My dad's like, "You having fun yet? You better do your homework." So anyhow, that was kind of how that worked out. But it was a great place to grow up. Never, grew up in a 2-family house, never locked our doors, ever. So never worried about anything. Grew up right across 2 houses down was the Bunker Hill Projects. It was the cleanest, nicest place with the nicest people. My aunt lived down there. I had cousins down there. I walked through the projects every day to get to St. Catharines when I went to grammar school. It was beautiful in there. We'd go play over there. The grass was always cut. There were flowers everywhere. I mean, it was just people that needed help lived there, and that's it. But they were really great people, and they were all hard workers. So, yeah, I had a blast growing up there.
How did you end up at Boston Latin?
So I was at St. Catharines in the 6th grade. You take the test to get into Latin, and I didn't want to go there. I wanted to go to Catholic Memorial and play hockey with, with some of my buddies, Malden Catholic or something like that. I was definitely going to Catholic school. And my dad said, "Hey, you think you're really smart? You got to take that Latin test." And I go, "I'm not going to Latin." He says, "I don't care. You're taking the test."
So why did your father make that
I think he just
assessment of you? Did you always want to debate at home?
Yeah, I wanted to debate. I want to argue with. I probably was argumentative. Anybody disagree with that, Silky?
You argumentative? No.
No, I just he just wanted me to take the test. He's like, "Hey, see how you match up against the other kids in the city." So,
and you ended up getting a full scholarship to Boston University.
Yeah, so I took the test. I got into Latin for 6 years. It was awesome, and then I ended up going to BU. But I got this merit scholarship. It was like an academic scholarship, and I got accepted to a couple Ivy League schools, and I just kind of chose BU because of Jack Parker.
Yeah, Jack Parker, I think, is the Bill Belichick of Boston University. I mean, he was a GOAT. I had some friends that we grew up with, the Sackos, who were great. Joe's the head coach of Boston right now. Keith Kachuk, we grew up in the same street together, same age. All you heard in the hockey world was BU, Jack Parker. And you tell a great story about, I think you got accepted to Harvard or one of the Ivy League schools. Yeah. And you had an interview with Jack Parker, and you got a great story. I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, well, there's a couple stories around that. I mean, Harvard was putting a lot of pressure on me to go because Latin, is like a Harvard feeder. But Mike Fiddler, who was at BU, he was a freshman when Mike Eurozione was a sophomore, grew up the next street from me. He's like, "Yeah, you go to Harvard." He goes, "Great. You always wanted to go there. Go do it." But he goes, "I'll tell you, guys like us from Charlestown, we get in trouble when we go places." And he goes, "You get in trouble at Harvard." He goes, "They'll just turn their back on you." And I, it wasn't like I was a troublemaker, but I kind of understood what he was saying. And he goes, "Parker, he'll have our backs. Like, he's not going to let us get away with everything, but he's not going to obviously throw us out when we make one mistake." So I kind of decided that I was leaning that way. And then I sat with Jack one day, and he's like, "You're going to go to Harvard, Jack." He goes, "You're just going to be some other smart kid over there." He goes, "You come here, you could be like, the smartest like academic person we have in the whole program. So, you get a chance to stand out." I was like, "Whatever, man." I go, "Is it going to cost me anything?" And he goes, "No." And he said, Harvard was monkeying around with money and everything else. And like Mike said, that was, even though it was $5,000 or something like that, it was all the money in the world.
A lot of money back then.
It was a ton of money. So, and my sister was, they were all going to school. So, yeah, the ride was free. It was great school. And obviously, it was really fun to play hockey over there. It was just great. And being 5 miles from home was also great.
So, Mike, you were the statesman when these two characters were coming into the locker room in BU. What was your first impression of Dave Silk?
And it depended what kind of mood he was in.
Was he a little temperamental, was he back then?
Well, Silky was trying to find his way through, and not, to come to Boston University, one of the few things, first of all, there were more Americans there. When I first went there, predominantly Canadian, so it was good to see, local kids coming in playing. Jack, obviously, and I'd played against Jack, in some summer league games here and there. But Dave was hard to get to know at the beginning. But then he fit in like most freshmen do eventually. They find their niche and what they do. For me, a lot of times you guys know this, I'd be back in Winthrop. I didn't spend a ton of time in the dorms. My roommate and I were really close and tight, and so weekends would be somewhere else if we weren't playing. But David was quiet at the beginning, but as he kind of fell into, being on the team and being a player, he was a great player.
So you could understand why there were multiple high schools in his.
Well, I heard all that
past.
later.
Oh, you did? You did?
Yeah, I didn't really, know much even about Thayer Academy in schools like that. You knew, Winthrop. We knew the North Shore players, and we even talk about it to this day. You live in the North Shore, you never go to the South Shore.
No.
So,
Listen,
you never went down to.
We never went over
I could go to
the
Scituate
bridge
by boat, I think, quicker than I could by car.
We never went over the bridge.
Right. Maybe I'd go to Marblehead or Swampscott, but I sure as heck wasn't going to the South Shore. So.
Yeah, I think Scituate for us was like Cape Cod. We thought it was Cape Cod. And like Melrose or Wakefield was like New Hampshire.
Right. But we played in the league. If I remember correctly, Dave, we played in the Natick League. And it was the college hockey league or high school league at the time.
So when this character came in, Jack O'Callahan, there's got to be some
bold, aggressive. He hasn't changed. Let's put it that way.
Age certainly hasn't.
I'm scared to death.
No, Jack. He came from Charlestown. He had the collar up and stuff, and he had a little, swagger about him. But again, the one thing about both of them, they were always great teammates. And fun to be around. Silky was hard to get to know early. Jack comes into a room and we talk. There's only one opinion that matters, and it's Jack's. And he set that tone right away. And the fact that they were such good players, I think made the transition a lot easier to be around. Because we were pretty good. My 4 years at Boston University, we won ECAC all 4 years.
You were in the Beanpot?
So I got to stick up. I got to stick up for my buddy a little bit here. It's not his fault. He is the way he is.
Who, Jack?
Not his fault at all.
That's right.
And I've gotten accused of kind of having similar characteristics. We were raised by Charlestown women.
That's right.
We were talking last night, and I said, and this is no disrespect to Charlestown women, they get to a certain age, like 50 or 55, and they all get the same haircut. And I think we described it last night as the same hairstyle. Angry and short. Right? That's the hairstyle,
Yep.
Which kind of describes the person. But, we were brought up by strong women and, taught us everything. You were brought up by a single mother, and I'm sure your mother was tough. And the reason why you probably went home every weekend, she was probably a great cook.
Oh, yeah. I'd bring the Canadian kids back, and I'd say, look, you come into the house, but when the Beanpot comes around, I might need 2 of your tickets.
Yeah, you're not going to use it.
Negotiate.
Oh, yeah.
No, my mother was a great cook, and like both parents, and I got to know Dave's mother a little when he was at BU, and I got to know Jack's father, I think, more than Jack's mother. But they were strong. My mother, I grew up in a 3-family house, and my mother ruled the house. My cousins, anybody stepped out of line, you didn't want to deal with Auntie Helen because she'd whack you.
And she didn't discriminate.
Didn't care if a friend of mine acted up, you'd have to deal with my mother. So. In those days, the mothers kind of controlled. My father thought he controlled the house, but no, my mother was in charge.
Yeah, I think it's important too. It's like it makes us who we are, being brought up by strong women. Our dads probably, and I know your dad died young, but our dads worked multiple jobs. Right. And listen, the hockey world back then was pretty expensive.
Yeah. My mother's favorite line was, "You'll get nothing and you'll like it."
Yeah, right. So, Miracle on Ice. I'm familiar with it because I grew up with it in the 80s, 90s, 2000s. What is the Miracle on Ice, in your words, Dave?
What's the Miracle on Ice? To me, the Miracle on Ice is that somehow the collection of players that we had and the coach were able to fire on all 8 cylinders at the same time, collectively, that somehow we all found our best game at the same time in the same place under the brightest lights that you could possibly have.
So, leading up to the 1980 game with the Russians, it was a struggle to make that team. I think I read there were 68 people that tried out and only 20 were going to make it, or maybe there were more that were invited.
26
made it.
out of 68, I think, that tried out, and then 6 were going to get cut
So what was that process like?
Well, it wasn't really like 68 guys had a chance to be on that team.
Right.
I mean,
I would
it was
agree with
basically he had 10 guys from his college.
9. I heard it was nine from Minnesota.
Yeah, I mean, he knew
4 from Boston University.
Yeah, he knew who the guys were. Like,
so how was he getting this intel? Because he's the coach in Minnesota, and then he gets named the
they're all
Olympic
connected.
coach.
They're all connected with the coaches around. They have the little fraternity that even though they hate each other, but they do talk. And USA Hockey was kind of navigating around a little bit back then, so there was some chit chat here, and guys are getting drafted out of colleges. And then he also coached the 1979 World Cup, which was in April and May in 1979 in Moscow, and he had a lot of guys that he was considering on that team. So, and then they had a sports festival the summer before in '78. So, I mean, it's a small community, the college hockey world. It's to this day, it still is a bit of a small community, and everybody knows all the players. Like, they've been recruiting guys. I mean, I'm sure when Dave was coming up, before he went to college, I'm sure he was getting phone calls from Wisconsin and Michigan. I was, and I was like, yeah, see you later. I'm not going to school in Michigan. I thought Worcester was Michigan, So, I mean, it was just like, they all knew us. But anyway, so when the team, it wasn't like it was an open tryout.
So Coach Brooks, you could say, had a preconceived notion of who was going to be on that squad?
At the outset.
Yeah, I think they were. I thought when I went to camp or the tryouts in Colorado Springs, when I looked at the rosters of the players, I remember sitting with Buzzy Schneider, because Buzzy and I had known each other for years. We played in 2 World Championship teams together. I looked and we were going down the left wings, and I said, Buzzy, one of us isn't going to be here. It's because we knew so and so was going to be there and that guy was going to be there. I said, that's 5 guys, Buzzy. I'm not sure what's going to happen here. And fortunately, we ended up both playing on the team. But I think going in, I thought there were only maybe 4 or 5 spots open.
So was there a 300 question psychological test, or is that? I
don't ever remember that. I don't know. Maybe do you?
Jack, if there was a test, psychological. I mean,
I aced it.
You aced it.
I broke into Herbie's office and stole the answers.
Typical Charlestown kid.
Yeah. But I don't really remember it. But I don't know. Maybe you took it.
I took it.
Then I must have taken it.
You took it.
Well, you must have passed because you made the team.
Yeah. But I don't know if that had anything to do with it.
I think it did.
I don't know. You think so?
I did some research on it, and it said that, everybody was required to take the 300-word test, and if you didn't take it, you weren't even trying out.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, do you remember that?
Yeah, I think there was some
it wasn't
sort
optional,
of,
that's for sure.
Yeah, no, I wasn't taking any chances.
Yeah, me neither.
I think there were probably 10 guys on that team that were told or at least had a pretty good idea that they were going to be on the team.
Yeah.
There were probably 5 guys that played themselves on the team in the tryouts in Colorado Springs. Probably 5 guys that maybe played themselves off the team in Colorado Springs. And then, a smattering of guys that were on the bubble, on the margin that ended up, making the team for whatever reason. But I certainly wasn't one of the 10 that was given a wink and a nod that I was going to be on that team. I had to make the team in the tryouts, and
I think that was
maybe Mike was the same.
situation. Yeah. I wasn't even on Team New England. I was on the at-large Great Lakes team, and we ended up winning the tournament. And I was the captain of that team, and then we...
Was that the first summer or the second summer?
No, the second one.
The second summer.
Second summer. I didn't play in the first one.
How many dress rehearsals were there? Was it like 78, 79, and then they invite, the key players to participate in tryouts and participate in these exhibition games? What is the process leading up to the year prior to the Olympics to playing on that team?
Well, we went to Colorado Springs and competed against each other in the festival tournament. 26 players were selected.
But you got to understand something. This was like a mini Olympics in Colorado Springs. It wasn't just hockey players, right? There were 5,000 athletes out there.
Yeah, there was opening ceremonies and
opening
everything.
ceremonies. It was like a mini Olympics.
Sports festival.
Festival.
National sports festival.
All the American sports, like basketball, hockey, all the track and field events, all the swimming events, the diving events, right? So it was amazing. It was like we had uniforms. Silky and I were on the New England team. We had blue uniforms. Mike was on the at-large teams. You guys were pink or something, right?
Yeah, it's crazy color. Like
a weird
like
color.
a yellowish.
Like a fuchsia?
Yeah, like a fuchsia, yeah.
Fuchsia.
Yeah. I can't believe he actually knows the difference between fuchsia and pink. I'm a little worried about you.
Jack,
there,
I went to Method High. It's no Latin, but it's Medford High.
But anyway, that's what it was like out there. So it was a really fun event in the summer of '78. You know, we had never seen anything like it. That was the first year.
So you go through that whole summer,
yeah.
and what happens?
Well, the team's picked, the 26 players. And now
No, not that
No,
summer.
78.
Oh, the
was
78.
79.
Yeah, see, I wasn't at that
You wasn't at
festival.
the first one.
I went to the second one.
Okay.
I didn't get invited to the first
You
one.
want to know what happened to the first one? Somebody will tell you.
What happened?
So the first one was at the Air Force Academy.
At the Air Force Academy, that's right.
And we had oxygen tanks on the end of the
Yeah.
bench, and we needed every gulp.
And we had just won the national championships at BU. We're the NCAA champs. And we hadn't seen these Minnesota guys. You didn't even see them because my freshman year, Mike's sophomore year, we had a massive brawl with these guys in Denver at the NCAA championships in the semifinals. And we had never seen them since. And we were so irate, at least I was. So now we get there to 78, we actually see them again. So Silky and I are on the team. And we got all Boston guys. But they're not all from BU. It's like this Providence guys, but they're all Boston guys, like BC guys, UNH guys. Yeah. And we all hate those Minnesota guys, right? And there's a team from Minnesota, and it's all the University of Minnesota guys. So it was regional. And we didn't give a shit. We just won the national championship. It was cocky as could imagine. So we had this massive
I don't
brawl.
see that in you, Jack. I think you'd be pretty humble.
Sean, we had this bench clearing brawl with these guys. We basically came in last place. We didn't play hockey out there. We were drinking and hanging out and freaking. We didn't care. The Olympics were 2 years away. It was a free vacation for us.
It was a dress rehearsal for the sports festival. Really, I mean, it was. We all knew we had another season to play,
Right.
and it was.
It was payback against those Gophers.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great. So what happens when the team is picked? You have to forfeit your senior.
Well,
not
hold on
forfeit
a second.
your
This is a year later now. You got to understand. So this is now 79 when
Okay.
we go back. And now they say, we're not doing regional teams anymore. Now they split everybody up because they didn't want guys brawling. And that was the year Mike showed up.
Right.
Right. So this is the
I didn't
second
know I
summer.
was eligible to go. But when I was playing in Toledo, I was not signed by an NHL team.
Yeah, that's funny because I read after that Alan Eagleson questioned your status as a pro hockey player versus an amateur,
I made-
and it's funny coming from a guy like that questioning someone's integrity.
Right,
Wow.
right. I made $3,500 my first year in Toledo
For the year.
for the year.
That was 1979, 78?
78, 79. Then I went back to Toledo, 77, 78. I graduated BU in 77, went to Toledo 77, 78. Then got invited to Herb called Bob Murray and said, Mike, you'd like Mike to come to the tryout in Colorado Springs. So I went back to Toledo to stay an amateur, and I think they gave me $6,000 the next year to play. So I went to the festival, played for the Great Lakes team, and then was one of the players that got picked for the team.
So if you were in the team since in 1978, you probably would have made $40,000 a year driving a truck.
Driving a truck. I don't work.
You guys probably had more, but you probably had more dating opportunities as a result of being famous hockey players.
But Toledo was a great place to play, but it was interesting. It was slapshot, but
Right.
But these guys were still, they won the national championship.
So when you went to that festival and you ended up making the Olympic hockey team, you were 25 years old or 24 years old.
24
maybe
at the
25. Most of you playing with, I think it was the youngest team at the time.
Our Olympic team would be the youngest team in college hockey today.
What was it like being the oldest statesman, getting into a locker room? And I know that Coach Brooks wanted you to be the captain.
Yeah, there's no way I was elected captain by my teammates because there's no way 9 guys from Minnesota were voting for from Boston.
Right. So you had 9 guys from Minnesota, 4 from Boston, or maybe
12 from Minnesota.
12 from Minnesota.
4 from Boston, 2 from Michigan, and 2 from Wisconsin.
Right. So Coach Brooks probably, tipped the scale your way and said, "This is who I want."
Right.
Why do you think he did that?
I never really thought about it. It was a great honor, obviously. I mean, these guys were all captain. He was a 2-time captain at Boston University. Billy Baker was a captain. Mark Johnson and Bobby Suda were captains. Buzzy Schneider was a captain. Kenny Maurer and Mark Wells were captain. Mark Johnson was a captain. I've always said to this day I was a captain amongst captains. I mean, we had a team of leaders.
That locker room must have been unbelievable, though. Think about
was
the Eagles.
fun.
The Eagles in that locker room, right? We're all alpha males.
Not at all.
We're all competitors. No?
Competitors, yeah. But we got
fun locker
along.
room.
It was a fun. We were we still are the most immature people you would ever want to spend time
Well,
with.
hockey players are. I mean, I have a son that plays at Suffolk University, and hockey players are crazy. I love them. I mean, I grew up my whole life. That locker room, and I tell people all the time because it's a different society now. Everybody gets a trophy, right?
Right.
In those locker rooms, and I played hockey up until like my freshman year in high school. I was a football player, but everybody in our neighborhood, everybody we grew up with played hockey. In those locker rooms, you know, you got taught a lot of lessons in those locker rooms, and the coaches and parents weren't allowed in them. So whatever disagreements or whatever differences people have with each other from 6 years old on till, you know, the high school,
Right.
I mean, you solved a lot of problems. You learned a lot of life lessons, and you know, you learned who's who in the zoo and then those locker rooms.
There was a bond and a friendship and a respect that we had for each other from the beginning. Once that team was picked, it was fun. It was fun getting to know the Minnesota guys a little, and they were totally different than us. I mean, it was like night and day. You know, after practice, we'd go somewhere and have a few beers. These guys would go home or
They go freaking bird hunting.
Yeah,
Or ice
hunting,
fishing.
ice fishing.
We go to the bar.
Yeah.
That's a shocker, Jack. That's a shocker.
Well, the drinking age was 21, and there were 3 or 4 guys on the team who weren't even 21. Some guys lived with their parents because we were based out of Minnesota.
Right.
And, you know, we'd go to, they couldn't understand why at 10:30 at night, we'd still be at a bar somewhere, and they were home. But the Boston guys, and then I would say, but we have to take Bobby Suter on our team.
Yeah.
Right, Suits was kind of more of an Easterner than a
Little bit.
Versus the Minnesota guys.
Right.
But he's right. On the weekends they couldn't wait to go ice fishing or bird hunting, and
You guys are going right to the bar.
you're going out somewhere.
We were really never there. We played 55 games and only 10 home games. So we
Right.
were on the road for 7 months.
So it was like Slapshot, the movie?
What do you mean?
Just, you know, the extracurricular activities after the game and
Just
practice.
when we kind of would pick spots around Minnesota, right? Like you didn't have a lot.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't that we were acting up all the
No,
time.
I
It
just
was
know that now you guys are all altar boys now.
No, but
great.
we compared to the Minnesota guys, it was like literally night and day. A huge difference between them and us. Just the way they grew up, lifestyles.
Right.
But
But
you
at the
grew up-
same time, sorry, but at the same time, at least in my opinion, I think you guys will agree with me. They were some of the greatest teammates
Right.
we ever had.
absolutely.
And even so, you know, you probably wouldn't be together after 8:00 at night. But you know what? When the puck dropped and the whistle blew and you know and there was a scrum in the corner, you knew that those guys had your back.
Think about 45 years later, and you're still probably friends with most of the people you played with on that team.
Definitely.
Oh, 100%.
Close friends.
Yeah, I mean, you know, phone calls and talking and get together. We have a fantasy camp in
A
Lake
little bit sick and
Placid.
tired of the happy birthdays every month.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you try
I mean,
not
there's like 20 guys. So, you know, you think it was 2 birthdays a month and it's like text like 20 guys. Happy birthday, Neil. Happy birthday, Dave. It's like driving me nuts a little bit.
Jack, is that an inconvenience for you?
It's a little inconvenient. Sure.
All right, good. Well, can you, if anybody's listening,
The list is getting shorter.
anybody that
The
was
list
on the
is
team,
getting shorter, though,
anybody that was on the
unfortunately.
teams listening, please, no more birthday texts. Jack's getting pissed off.
That's right.
No, he's already said that, though. So
I said it just. I
he-
tell him.
he
I
already
go,
made that
on
statement.
January 1st. Why don't we just say, "Hey, happy birthday, everyone, whatever it is. Talk to you in a year."
So most people talk about the Olympic game. They think you beat the Russians to win the gold medal, like the people that didn't watch it, like the people born in 2000 or after that. But that's really not what happened. So what happened?
Well, we went up to there was a Holiday Inn at the top of the hill, and
That was fun.
the Soviet game was on tape delay, so we actually went up and watched the game, right?
With our parents
with
and
our
stuff.
families,
And with
and-
3,000 people,
After you
right?
won,
Yeah,
after you beat
yeah.
it.
I didn't watch it because after the game they grabbed Jimmy and I to interviews with Jim Lampley on the streets at downtown Lake Placid. Because my dad was interviewed and my mother was like standing there staring at Jim Lampley. So I didn't get to see the game, but the guys went back and watched it.
And you scored the winning goal in
Right.
the Russian game. Can we pull that up?
Does it go in again?
It's a nice shot.
Here's the best play right here, this kid.
That's a snipe.
Yep.
Yeah, I got all of that one. But
Could you still do that
not
today?
No.
You
My
see that
grandson tells me, "Papa, you shot off the wrong foot."
Yeah.
And I say, "You shoot when you're ready." But he was just mentioning the play.
What did that feel like?
Jack.
What did that feel like when you scored that goal?
It gave us the lead, and that's how
10
I
minutes
looked
left
at
in
it.
the game.
Yeah, there was still
Exactly.
eternity to play.
1-0, 0-0.
But if it wasn't for Mark Johnson, we wouldn't have been in
Right.
that position at all. So for me, it was just an opportunity to help out at a time when I had a chance to help out.
So after this game, did you realize you were going to win the gold medal, or did you? Because you had one game left. It was a gold medal game. What was the thought process going into that game, especially coming
Tell a
off,
story about
especially-
Herbie that day, Silky.
especially
Remember on
coming off
Saturday,
such
you
a
remember?
great victory?
No, you go ahead. Go ahead.
So, we beat the Russians. We go watch it with our parents, Bobby Suter, everybody was going back to the village. Bobby Suter and I went out to the little bar down by the rink and actually hung out for a little bit just to be part of it. No one knew who we were. It was fun to see the excitement. And then the next day we had practice at like 11 and we came in and, we knew we had a game left, but Herbie was like,
Flipped out.
he had this snarl. Remember he had this like grimace. Like, what's his problem?
And we were signing pictures and stuff.
Yeah, we're signing
and he
stuff,
didn't-
and
is that when he
everybody's
flipped
like,
the table up?
loving us, and he just lost it. I don't remember flipping the table.
I thought I remember him pounding on the table. And then he we had
It's the hardest practice.
one
we
of the
had all
hardest practice we had all year. And I'm like, why is he so
Beat the
pissed
crap
off?
out
We
of
just beat the Russians.
Yeah.
I think he probably wanted to just stay focused.
year. Yeah.
Well, I think he wanted to get all that energy and excitement out of us.
But
Well,
think
also
about it. You're
that-
21 years
Yeah.
old, 25.
Yeah.
You just beat
Yeah.
a team that won the last six.
Yeah. Greatest
six-
team ever.
Greatest team ever. We're in the middle of the Cold War in the United
yeah.
States,
Yeah.
and you pull off a huge victory. I mean, how does a 20-year-old kid stay humble after doing
That's
that?
what Herbie took care of that.
He made sure. Yeah.
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 No, he beat us. He really skated us incredibly hard for an hour, and that's when he said that. If you lose this game, he said it to us on the ice, and he basically was saying, reminding us we got a game to play, and if you you did something great last night, but if you lose this tomorrow, it's going to mean nothing.
So prior to the game against the Russians, I read a quote that he said to you, the team, that you were born to be a player, you were meant to be here. This moment is yours. Is that accurate?
I remember that being in the locker room before the Soviet game.
Mm-hmm.
Not the speech in the movie. That was
Right.
That was like really long in the movie.
Right.
I remember it, and it's funny when we get together, we all kind of remember some things, but at different times. I remember it being before the Soviet game. You were born to be a player. You were meant to be here. This moment is yours. And Herb was a great speaker. I mean, he knew what to say and when to say it. So that's what I remember him saying.
So what was life like after winning the gold medal? I mean, you're tremendous. America loves you. How is it? It must be pretty difficult to stay humble, thinking about what you just achieved.
We all kind of did three different things,
Yeah.
Like Dave went and signed with the Rangers and started playing right away.
Right.
Mike.
I went out and I think everybody went and signed. I was, Phil Vercoda went to Europe, I think.
Yeah.
A couple of guys went over to Europe.
Broughton went back to school.
Neil Broughton went back to Minnesota, won the first Hobie Baker that next year at the University of Minnesota. I got out into the public.
Yeah, you chose not to sign because I think you made a statement this was the pinnacle of your career.
Yeah, I think at 25 for me, having been involved, I went to camp with the Rangers. I went to camp in Colorado. And again, this is my opinion. I don't believe Americans and college players were given an opportunity when I was playing. Could I have played in the National Hockey League? I think I could have. I think I would have been a good 3-4 year player, third, fourth line player, good teammate, hopefully, maybe kill penalties or do whatever. But at 25, I decided it was time to move on, and I was going to coach and teach. I talked to Jack Parker about taking an assistant coaching job at BU, and he said, "Well, maybe we'll talk in the summer." And then my life took off.
Right.
Opportunities, I should say, speaking and TV. Matter of fact, when Silky was playing, I was commentating for the Rangers.
Now, you signed with the Rangers right after the Olympics. I think you played, 249 games in the NHL between Boston and the Devils. What was that like coming off an Olympic victory, gold medalist, going into the NHL?
It was a dream come true. Growing up playing hockey, I always wanted to be an NHL player. I always wanted to be a Boston Bruin, and I got to do both of those things, and so it was. The Olympic team was kind of an added bonus, honestly. Because no one really sets their sights on playing for an Olympic team because the timing has to be right, for when the Olympics are playing. It just
Every
a lot of
4
things
years.
have to fall in order, right? Every 4 years, and look, there were guys that were terrific players, better players than me that for whatever reasons weren't on that final team. Joe Mullen turned pro, great player. I'm still to this day shocked that Ralph Cox wasn't on the final team. So, the Olympics were fantastic, but I always wanted to be a pro player, and so to be able to sign a contract and do that was, it was a dream come true.
What about you,
nothing
Jack?
less.
I have a different experience. So I kind of agree with Mike that Americans weren't given opportunities to play professional hockey back then, unless you were Paul Holmgren, who could get 500 minutes and penalties. If you're American, you got to go fight your way into the league. So Americans didn't play in the NHL. Silky you always did want to be an NHL player, even when we were in college. And I know you always worked at it and would talk about it. I wanted to graduate from college, play on the Olympic team, and go to business school or go to get a law degree. That's all I wanted to do. I got drafted in my sophomore year, and then, it just turned out that I signed a contract and I just played for the next 9 years. So, I wasn't anticipating doing that. And it just bugs me about how the Canadians, they ran the league, general managers, coaches, players, whatever. We had to really break our way into the league as Americans. And I think one of our greatest accomplishments, which is sort of a sidebar, is that we really did sort of break through that glass ceiling over the next 10 years and really create a lot of opportunities for the kids coming behind us, like our grandchildren or our children, like the Kachucks of the world. And I mean, they would have done it anyway, but we really definitely cracked that ceiling, not only for Americans, but also for Europeans.
So what was the first NHL contract? How much money was that?
Yeah, mine was $60,000 if I made the NHL.
Yeah, 3-year deal for me, 60, 65, 70.
We're at the same.
So
25 to sign.
1989.
I got 35 to sign.
Funny story.
That was 5 speaking engagements for me.
But plus, the thing was, because I was injured, and like I said, David went to play for the Rangers. Mike starts doing all this speaking. We all had the same agent, I think, right? You had Bobby Murray too, right? We all had Bob Murray, who was our defense coach in college. And so Mike's getting all these phone calls. I'm injured, man. I'm back in Chicago. I went to Chicago, and they looked at my knee, and they said, you can't play. Go home. See you in September. I had nothing to do. So I was like cleaning up after Mike. He's got 5 opportunities to do something. He can only do 3 of them. I'll do the other 2. So I'm getting like $1,500 for this and $2,500 for that.
Once again, you're riding Mike Eurozione.
Riding Mike's tails. Yep, it was really fun. I was getting all these little checks. I mean, I did a lot of fun stuff and kept me busy because I had nothing else to do after.
So think about this: 1980, in the world that I come from, the Teamsters Union, we have record membership. We have truck drivers in the freight industry making $50,000, $60,000 a year back then. And you're playing a game, You're playing a game, hockey, 80 games a year, grind, physical. And I think you and I had a conversation, one of our mutual friends one time, where he said, oh yeah, O'Callaghan, who cares? You played pro hockey. He goes, I made more than you in 1980. And you said, yeah, but John, I had a lot more fun.
Well, John Murphy is just a grumpy guy anyway, as you know that. He's one of my closest and oldest friends from Boston. But yeah, if the guys that you grew up with in Charlestown, if you're not teasing each other, you're not really,
Yeah, it's like a hallmark. If you're shitting all over each other, it means it's a hallmark. It's like a Valentine's Day.
It's like a Valentine's Day card. Yeah. So if you're not stabbing, not stabbing, that's the wrong word, but jabbing each other a little bit. We used to do that again all the time. But once you get outside those town limits, we're all family and we defend each other.
There's no doubt.
No doubt.
So $60,000 a year to play a game you loved. Did you consider that big money or?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I bought my first house. I went $5,000 down. I think I paid $50,000 for a house in Salem. I mean,
I remember after I got a phone call from IBM, and they asked me to do 10 appearances, 5 at the Fontainebleau in Florida, and 5 at the Drake Hotel in San Francisco, and they were going to pay me $5,000 each appearance. So I made 10 appearances. The most money my dad I think ever made in a year might have been $30,000. So I did 10 speaking, and it was only 5 minutes. We only need you to come on the stage and just kind of wave to the people. So I was like, this is a pretty good deal.
What was the downside about being famous? Was there a downside?
I mean, you got to assume that we're famous. I don't think any of us really kind of view it like that necessarily.
No, but think about it. Like you don't view yourself in that role, but you beat the Russians, right? Which no one thought was going to happen. Then you go on to successful careers. You as a public speaker, you two as NHL players. I think you played 249 games and you played over 300, right? What is the downside of having such success at a young age? If there is one.
To me, I think at the start was the visibility. People knowing who you were. Go to a restaurant, go to a bar, go somewhere, walk on an airplane. I think for me, the hardest adjustment, it was easy for me because I'm pretty easy to get along with. I think the hardest was my girlfriend, who's not my wife. Like, here I am, I'm in LA, I'm in Vegas, I'm in Hawaii, I'm doing all these things, and she's sitting home wondering, what's going to happen to me? So I've always given her credit for having to deal with the tension I was getting. But when you live in Winthrop, you come home and your friends get you grounded.
Think about last night. We went to dinner. Mike and Jack and I went to dinner, and we were at a restaurant, Strager in the North End, Nick Verano's place. Great food. How many people walking up to you both, congratulating you or acknowledging what you did? And they weren't 40 or 50-year-olds. Some of them were 25 and 30-year-olds.
It's also gotten to the point that we happened to be having dinner with the general president of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, who was a recognizable person as well. At
Oh,
the
what a
table.
suck up that was.
So I'm just saying,
yeah.
Sean, it's in Boston. I mean, it was fun. And the three of us, and we're sitting next to the quarterback for the Patriots, and it was an unbelievable night because there were so many people in there that everybody was kind of like walking around talking to everybody, and it was really fun. I mean, we had a ball, but kind of to say what Mike, and I don't know if I think these guys will agree with me when I say that you recognize you're famous, but we're known for one of the greatest sporting events ever, and it's been, I'm speaking for myself, I've had nothing but fun for 45 years talking to people about it. I've never had a bad conversation. And if anything, if you're feeling down sometime and you see some kid that saw you in the movie or some guy that's, he's 60 and he's telling you how he watched it with his dad and he starts crying.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't have a bad day when you're having those conversations.
People come up to me all the time and they'll say, I remember where I was when we won.
Yeah.
And I always go, I didn't know you were on the team.
Maybe they were French. Oui.
But it was a moment that we didn't realize it at the time. And even now, I'm sure you guys have the same feeling. Every once in a while, something will happen. I'll just shake my head and go, really? Because it meant so much to so many people. Yeah. And you're right, Jack. People come up and they'll start crying. I'm like, don't worry. But no, I watched that game with my grandfather. Or my dad or my mom, and it was a special moment.
The stories are amazing.
Well, I think part of the good thing about it is, 2004, 2005, the movie Miracle comes out. So you have that next generation that may not have been around to witness the miracle that actually happened, but people know. I mean, people pay attention. I mean, ESPN, I think, said it was the greatest victory in sports history. And
the letters I get, and I'm sure Dave and Jack get them, I get probably 15 or 20 a month from kids wanting autographed pictures. They've seen the movie Miracle. I go to my grandkids' games, and parents will take a picture with my son. They've all seen the movie Miracle. So there is a new generation of fans, and it's nice to have that. Mm-hmm. But to me, it was something that was an incredible part of our life, and it was an athletic event that touched the lives of Americans in a positive way. We could use a 1980 right now.
Oh, we definitely could use a 1980.
But I think that's what made that moment so special. It wasn't just a hockey game.
Well, I think the good thing about, and again, this is an unqualified opinion, this is just Sean O'Brien, who is a huge fan of hockey and who watched that miracle happen. And you make a great point. You say that, we need a 1980 to happen again. And I think, you and I have a lot in common, right? Outside of I never scored a winning goal against the Russians. I may have recovered a fumble against Malden High or something, but nothing real crazy. But
on Thanksgiving.
We both, Thanksgiving. We both spoke at the Republican National Convention.
That's right.
You spoke in 2012, and I spoke this past summer. And I think the state of our country right now could use another 1980, because the one thing that what you all achieved in that game, it brought America so close together. Right. I can remember, people that weren't even hockey fans or didn't even know anything about sports. I think they were hanging like a gold ribbon on their doors that says "Welcome home, boys," and all that stuff. So, this political nature we're in right now, and the way the country is so divided on many issues, I think we should have something and I think it should be recognized, especially on a 45th anniversary coming up, on what you achieved, on how we can maybe couch this into bringing this country back together. I mean, I think there's an opportunity here. I mean, look, I spoke at the Republican National Convention. I know you did. And it wasn't easy because the nature of politics. And I got criticized tremendously for speaking there. And it was a speech that wasn't Republican, Democratic, or independent. It was a speech about working people and how important, how valuable we are. And people that didn't even listen to the speech were critical. Did that happen to you?
No, we were criticized when we did something with President Trump. But with my situation, it was mainly, if it wasn't for Mitt Romney, I don't believe we would have lit the cauldron in Salt Lake City, which is the ultimate honor. When you think Muhammad Ali in Atlanta and Rayford Johnson in Los Angeles, and they selected us to do it at a very difficult time in our country. And, it was Mitt Romney that made that decision. So then Mitt came back to Boston and he was the governor of Massachusetts. So I got to know him even more. And I remember he said to me, Mike, if there's anything I can ever do for you, let me know. And I said, Mitt, you're the governor of Massachusetts. I said, I can get anything done in Massachusetts. But if you ever become president, now maybe I'll call you up for a favor. And then he asked me to speak at the convention, and it was great because I'd never been anything like that. I'm not a political person. I don't know a lot about politics, but I just have tremendous respect for Mitt Romney and the opportunity he gave our team in Salt Lake City. So to me, it was a favor, and it was fun. It was the USA chants were going on as I was speaking, and it was pretty cool. But I'm not a real knowledgeable person when it comes to politics. But when we got involved with President Trump, the hate mail that I got in the phone calls and messages that were left on my machine were just, why? I've known Mr. Trump because he used to play celebrity golf with us years ago. But I was blown away by the reaction of people just.
Yeah, it's a different world now. I mean, you look at how people have opinions, and opinions matter, right? But if you and I have a difference of opinions, or you and I and Jack have difference of opinions, people are so quick to end friendships, to stop conversations. And I think it's important, especially, in the sports world. I think it's important in regular society that, people can have their opinions of each other, coaches, players, or whoever it is, but that shouldn't determine the direction that everybody goes in this country, or shouldn't determine any type of negativity towards what you achieved. Think about it. You go and you speak at an event, and people are so fast to forget about all that you've achieved. And it wasn't just winning a gold medal. It wasn't just beating the Russians. You basically brought this country back together for a certain period of time.
People just don't respect people's opinion. Now, if you like Joe Biden, I respect that. Maybe I'm thinking differently, but I still respect your right to choose and do what you want to do. It doesn't make you an asshole or me an asshole. But today you can't. When we were talking about that earlier, you can't.
It's like a much longer conversation than going down this road.
What do you have a Jack, this is my podcast.
I'm just saying, we could be talking about this whole political stuff and why,
Well, I think it's important because think about it.
It is important.
You had to go in 1980 after winning the gold medal. We're in the middle of a Cold War. You beat the Russians, right?
Yeah.
You go to the White House. Now, I'm sure there were people on that team that didn't agree with the president at the time. What was that like?
It was awesome. Didn't matter who the president was.
Did you care? Well,
I wanted to hit golf balls off the lawn. I couldn't believe how green the grass was.
It was beautiful. And it was terrific. And going down there and I remember getting on. President Carter. He sent his plane for us, right? And so we went, and they wanted us to come down, but we got to have the whole Olympic team, so everybody came, right? So, but we get on there. We get first dibs on the plane, right? So Bobby Souter and I, we go in and we look kind of right up the stairs, and we sit right up front here. And these two big chairs, and there's a table, and there's two chairs here. And Suits and I are sitting there like this, and all of a sudden here comes everybody else, and you guys are kind of spreading around, and all of a sudden these two skier girls came up, and they saw us, and they, we knew we were hockey players. They go, "Hey, do you mind if we sit here?" Now they wouldn't 2 weeks ago they wouldn't even talk to us. Right. But this time, "Hey, mind if we sit here?" I looked at Suits, I go, "Things are looking up, Suits."
Always comes back to that.
It always does. It's undefeated, Sean. Undefeated.
You're undefeated?
No. You know it's undefeated. But anyhow, but it was Kristen Cooper and Vicky Fleckenstein. I'll never forget. She had a redhead. They were both skiers. And I mean, when these two women sat down next to me in Suits, I was like, "Yeah, man, they're going to talk to us now," because they wouldn't talk to us otherwise. They thought hockey players were whack jobs.
Jack, what was I wearing last night?
I don't know if
you don't remember.
I don't
right?
want to spill.
You don't remember. But you remember that.
I remember that.
All right. Thanks.
You were wearing a hoodie, Sean.
What was it like for you being at the White House?
Couldn't believe I was there. Couldn't believe it. but it was also, I do remember it was a little bit bittersweet because I remember thinking, you know what, this is all going to be over. When we get on the plane and go back home, this is all done. And as excited as I was for the next chapter, I remember being really a little bit sad that, you know, all of a sudden, this is it. You know, we're not going to see each other in the dorms or at school or you know, anything. I mean, we're done. We're done here. And I remember feeling a little bit emotional about
Like
that, I think.
incredible. So it's interesting you bring that up because you and I, you told me about it. You may remember this. I'll never forget it. We were going to go back to Boston. It was wrapping up. We were having lunch, and I remember coming over. You know, I was like this, right? Hey, whatever, fun of the White House. And I came over to Silky, and you had this really sad look on your face. And I was looking at him. I go, "Is everything okay?" And he goes, and you looked at me. I'm getting chills even saying it. You go, "Jack, it's over.
Yeah.
This is it. We're not a team anymore. It's over." And you kind of looked down, and it was like, and I started filling up, and you were like a little teary, and I was too because I hadn't considered that we weren't going to see each other again, that we weren't a team anymore.
I remember you saying
It was unbelievable.
I remember him saying it on the airplane. We were on the
Dave.
flying back, and
I
I
remember that
looked
from
at
the White
Silky. I
House.
said, "Silky, what's the matter?"
Yeah.
And he looked at me and he goes, "It's over."
It's over. Yeah, it was a weird feeling.
And I
You
never
kinda
forget that. I
crystallized it
never
there.
forget that. It's
I
over.
know. It was
We're
hard.
done.
There's always one potty pooper, isn't there?
Oh, man.
I mean, really. So
Then he
that's,
came back. Then
that's what you had to do.
we got to Boston though. My uncle Freddie was a postal inspector. He had kind of figured out how to get through. And Silky, you know, Mike was going. I don't even know where you went. Probably New York or something. But Dave, our parents were all still in Lake Placid. So Silky came to Charlestown with me.
Yeah.
We kind of
That's right, yeah.
We
Did you go to McAvoy's?
No, I didn't
Blue
go
Mirror?
there. I had a
Blue Mirror?
bad experience there one night.
Sweet potato.
We went to Concord Street, but Mayor White had sent the limo for me.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah. And
That's
so
great.
Silky and I, we were like, let's drive around Charlestown and show everybody our gold medal. We drove around. It was like, whatever, Monday at like 4 o'clock. There's freaking nobody around.
So getting back to, you know,
Everyone was in front of my house.
Yeah, that's at my house too.
getting back to, you know, going into the NHL, you know, there's always people that, no matter what you do, you know, they're going to be jealous or envious. Did you run into any of that when you went into the NHL? Was there any people that were jealous? Were there any people that were like, look at these guys coming in here? I mean, was there any type of animosity at all?
Good.
I ran into it in the American League more than the National League. In the minors, there were a lot of guys that were trying to get to the next level. Some guys were on their way up. Some guys were on their way down. Some guys weren't sure which way they were going. So I think there was definitely some resentment and animosity. You know, American kid, college kid, gold medal. You know, I think there was some of that
Boston?
baked in. Boston.
Yeah.
I think Billy Baker had some. Didn't Billy get jumped or get in a fight his first game? I mean,
Probably.
Tim Kerr, 3 times.
Billy Baker and Tim Kerr
3 times.
in the same game.
yeah.
Wasn't pretty.
Can we pull that up? Let's see this thing.
Yeah, so that's not inside
Tim Kerr was
baseball,
like a
but
linebacker on skates for
Yeah,
Philadelphia.
And by the way,
right?
he never fought anybody.
No.
He was a big,
Right.
tough guy, but he never fought anybody.
Well, I remember
maybe
when,
go to a point where,
Yeah.
you know, there was some
well,
animosity.
we played during our preseason. We played the Minnesota North Stars in Minnesota,
Yeah.
and wasn't it Bobby Smith that jumped Phil?
No, it was Brad Maxwell.
Brad Maxwell.
Max jumped Phil.
Now, Jack, there's a
Vercote.
famous picture. We couldn't find it, though. Richie, we tried to find it earlier, right? Jack has a picture smiling. He's missing his 2 front chicklets.
Okay. Where
How'd
you
you,
going with this?
how'd you get them back?
They grew back.
Did you have good dental?
I had
in
to
the
trade my hair.
Did you
in
have
for
good dental in the
I had to trade my hair in
NHLPA?
for my teeth. I lost those when I was 11 years old in Melrose, maybe 10. You know, it didn't matter because where we grew up in Charleston, everybody had false teeth, so it was almost like a rite of passage.
Yeah,
when
you
I-
get a cavity, they just pull it.
They just yank it, you know. So I fell on the back of a guy's skate and hit my teeth and knocked them right out. And now normally they would pick the teeth up, take me to the hospital, stick them back in. They would have been fine in a week. My parents were like, in the garbage. Let's go to the dentist, get a false teeth. So I had no teeth until I went to Chicago and met a dentist to fix them all up for me.
So when you met those 2 ski bunnies,
Yep.
did you take the teeth out a couple times? Just show 'em?
No, I was probably really combing my hair back then, trying to, you know.
Trying to look all...
We could have done anything we wanted back then because it was like all of a sudden it was our time, right, Silky? It was our time. You know, now the girls are sitting with us instead of us trying to sit with them and they're going, you guys hockey players, they get up and leave. Really, it was like someone just farted at the table. I mean, they would get up and leave. It was that bad.
That's crazy. So 45th anniversary coming up. What is planned for the celebration? What's planned for the acknowledgement? Is there anything?
Nothing right now. I know there's some talk that a group of people are trying to do something with Netflix 45th anniversary celebration. That's been talked about. There has been talk recently. We read that there are some congressmen and people in Congress that are trying to pass to get our team the Congressional Gold Medal, which would be unbelievable. So there's been some talk of that.
Yeah, I think there's a Senate. I think there's a congressman, Stauber, out of Minnesota, who's a huge hockey fan.
Elise Stefanik, who I've spoken to about this.
And by the way, he's an Olympic drinker. I've had a few Bud Lights with him in the Delta Sky Lounge. Yes.
Okay.
So huge fan. And you know what's funny? He's the one that actually told me about it. We were in a Delta Sky Lounge on a connecting flight. I don't know if it was, I forget, I was going to Minnesota or he was going, whatever it was. And he's talking about, you're from Boston, and he's talking about hockey. And he's the one that brought it up to me, saying, he's trying to work on getting you guys the Congressional Medal of Honor, I believe
Congressional Gold Medal.
Gold Medal. And he was all psyched up about it. And then I told him, I said, well, I know Jack O'Callaghan's a good friend, Dave Silk, Mike Eurozione. And you would have thought, he opened a Christmas gift he was, looking for his entire life. And he couldn't go on and on and off. I'm going to fight and I'm going to get it done. And matter of fact, I was just in a meeting with and he's a Republican, very, very supporting of working people. And we were in a meeting recently with Republican Congress people. I'm trying to actually work bipartisan across the aisle to get some stuff done, not only for working people, but for this country. And of course, he brings up, the Olympic hockey team. He brings up, how he's working on this stuff. So funny story. They asked me, I'm in a round table with all these congressional representatives, and they asked me, what's your favorite American product? And I didn't hesitate. I looked at Stauber and go, Bud Light. And everybody started laughing, right? But he's working hard on your behalf. What else? What else is there? I heard there was some fundraising going on for maybe a monument.
Yeah, they've been talking about it. The people in Lake Placid, ORDA, Olympic Regional Development Authority, they want to build a statue of our team on the podium. The scene of us all standing.
I think it's right here. We just pulled it up.
Yeah.
Right here. So what is that all about?
You mean the picture, or do you mean the whole thing about raising the funds?
Raising the funds.
They're trying to raise funds for that statue to go out in front of the building in Lake Placid, and they want to raise money for a statue of Eric Heiden, which should absolutely be done.
And they don't want to do it with corporate funds. The key is they want Americans to write checks for $5 or whatever it is, $10, as opposed to going to, some big company and just have them pay for it.
One of those white collar crime syndicates that I fight every day.
I was going to say maybe Amazon.
No, never Amazon.
White collar crime syndicates. You'd rather do it with the real people, Americans that this meant something to, and I mean that's been the motivation behind it. But it's. Is
there any pushback? I guess.
No, it just stalled a little bit. I think.
I mean, look, Rocky Balboa, who was a fictional character, has a statue of him. It wasn't.
Well, there's a lot of statues. There's a lot of statues around the country. There's a lot of arenas and stuff that have statues, deservingly so.
Yeah.
The Bobby Orr, has that one of Bobby, which is awesome, and it should be there.
It's right out in front of the garden.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But if you go to there's a Herb Brooks statue in Minnesota. I think it would be great for our team, our legacy. When you think of Lake Placid, the kids that go there and play in these tournaments, I mean, how many pictures would be taken in front of it? And again, like I said, Eric Heiden, you'll never see that again.
No, speed skater.
Five gold medals outdoors.
5 world records.
Yeah.
Can we pull up Eric Heiden? Rich, you are how old?
23.
Oh yeah, you have no idea.
I was actually with Eric at Dan Jensen's golf tournament.
Yeah.
He looks great.
Yeah, I didn't even recognize him.
What I remember about Eric Heiden is how big his legs were.
Yeah.
How about when he showed up like that in a gold suit as an American? He was the favorite in all the races that he was in. And he says, I think I'm just going to wear gold.
It's going to match the medal?
That's called confidence.
Yeah, it's going to match the medal. Yeah. Well, Mike, there was some talk that they were going to put a statue of Jack O'Callaghan right next to the Bunker Hill Monument.
Right next to William Prescott.
They started a GoFundMe page. And it's trending like -500 right now.
It's not doing too well. I'm the only one that put $5 in.
So if you look at hockey today, versus when you played? What are the differences?
Well, it's like night and day. They're so much bigger.
Faster.
Technology, man.
Yeah. Well, I watch, working at Boston University, I watch us practice all the time. We get guys 6'4", 6'5", 6'4", 6'5". We never had that. And the speed of the game, you guys played at the NHL level. I just commentated on it. But you watch the players, the influx of the players, the Europeans now weren't around back a long time ago. And it's a different game. It's a different game. It's not as physical as it used to be. There's no fighting, or very little. I just think the skill levels is incredible.
I think one of the throwbacks right now playing is Matthew Tkachuk. That kid plays physical, and he's Brady and Matthew. The dad and I grew up together, and Keith, I went to a UFC fight with him over the summer, and Keith was just a man among boys growing up, and those kids played just like the father. But to your point, there's not a lot of physicality anymore in the game. It's more finesse, more hands. I watched my son play at Suffolk, and I'm always saying to him, why don't you guys hit? Why aren't you banging that guy in the corner? And it's just not the game.
They've kind of legislated it out of the game a little, a lot.
It's kind of like the NFL with quarterbacks, right?
Correct. They've legislated it out of the game, and really what it's done is it's given players a lot more confidence to go to some of the dark areas of the ice, right? Because they know they're not going to get cross-checked in the head or elbowed in the face, and they're also not going to get interfered with. So, they've kind of legislated all that out. So these players have much more confidence going at full speed into corners and stuff where, back in the 80s and we were playing, you could do it, but you might not come out on your feet, right? Because, so you had to be more careful. And there was a lot of interfering and impeding back then. They've legislated that all out. So now these guys have just so much confidence to go anywhere they want to go on the ice at a high rate of speed.
With no physical consequences.
They're not really worried about that. So that's why you see sometimes guys get hit and they just can't understand how they got hit. Or people put themselves in dangerous situations and they get hurt because they're not anticipating, protecting themselves because they let the refs protect them, So that's changed the game a lot. What I've seen is that that fear factor is kind of gone. There were places when you and I were playing, you just didn't want to go there.
You could only get about 14 guys healthy when the Rangers went in to play in the Spectrum.
What was the locker room like back then? Smoking butts, drinking beers?
Oh yeah.
Some of the Hall of Famers, there'd be 2 cigarettes in the stall for the guys to go in and get a quick butt in between periods, right?
They had ashtrays right in the lockers.
Yeah. I was playing for the Blackhawks. We between periods, there's 20 guys sitting in their stalls. Hey, 12, 13 guys would light up between periods.
That's amazing.
The other thing that's changed is that when we played, organizations built their teams around the rink that they played in. All the rinks had different sizes. Right. So, out east, Buffalo, Boston, they were real small. They were, out west, Edmonton, Calgary, big. Vancouver, they were big. So they would build their teams to have an advantage based on the ice surface, right? So, you'd go out, it was a very different team makeup from out east versus out west.
So comparing,
you think about this, though. Think about Boston Garden, the smallest rink ever, right? What was it 83 feet wide?
Something like that.
183 feet, something like that, right? So, and if you're a right defenseman and you got like John Wensink, Al Secord, Stan Jonathan, Terry O'Reilly breathing down your neck, and in a rink as big as this table, here they come. You're scared to death. Like I remember the first game I ever played in Chicago. At the Boston Garden. It was as a pro. Dale Talon was doing the color commentary. And he's sitting in the locker room. He was a defenseman in his career, and he's sitting there with a big smile on his face. It's like this, looking around. And I'm getting ready to go. I go, "What are you so happy about?" And it was his first game doing color commentary at Boston Garden. He had played many games there, and he's sitting there smiling. I go, "What are you so happy about?" He goes, "I've never sat in this locker room before a game and not been scared to death." He goes, "I'm going up to the booth to call the game." He goes, "This is fun. I'm not going to go out there and get killed by these left wingers." So
yeah, that smaller ice surface, definitely. If you compare the NHL now to when you played and compare it to pro sports in general, do you think professional hockey players now are underpaid compared to other sports? Especially, you're playing 80 games a year.
Jason Tatum Jason Tatum makes more than the top 5 NHL hockey players' salaries combined. That says something right there.
It's economics.
You know, like one of my favorite lines was Neil Broughton's brother, Aaron Broughton. I was playing with him in New Jersey. He's a quiet guy, and he's sitting across the locker room over there. And on a random basis, he looks over me and goes, "You know, Jack," he goes, "some players in this league are overpaid, and some players are underpaid." He goes, "You know, at the end of the day, you just got to hope you're one of the guys that are overpaid." And that's kind of the reality of it, you know? It's like whatever the market bears. And in football, the market will bear anything.
It's not a sport that's losing money. I mean, the NHL, the owners, they're making money, right?
I don't know. I don't think all of them are.
I think the Bruins are because the Celtics have to pay rent for the building. So,
Right, yeah. So they're getting a benefit out of
there's
the
there's a little perk right there.
Yeah, I mean, I look at hockey players and I look at the NHL, and again, I just look at it like being such a blue collar sport. And there's not a whole lot of longevity, right? If you make it to the NHL, you know, some guys are fortunate enough to get 10, 12 years in, but it always comes down to the benefits. And again, my life, my world, we're always fighting for better pay, better benefits, better retirement. Is that the thought process now in the NHL, or is it just, look, let's get in there, make as much money as we can, and look for a career after hockey?
Well, I know this. There's no way. Are they overpaid, underpaid? I don't know. I don't know. I can pretty much guarantee that they don't have as much fun as we did. It's just different. You know, it's much more of a.
You can't put a price on fun, right?
Yeah, right.
Does anybody
Does
anybody have a better bad idea? Let's have fun instead of making money.
Idea.
Well,
Just
the
the best bad idea you have.
You look at hockey players, like let's use Matthew Tkachuk. He plays every night. You follow some basketball, and some of the star players, they take a couple of nights off because they need to rest. That doesn't happen in a hockey.
Yeah, and I
arena.
played football, and football was a violent sport. I played football because I loved it. I loved the violence. I loved hitting, and I loved, obviously everything that went along with it. But you're getting a break for 30 seconds after every play, right? And it is a physical sport. But you're playing hockey. You're up and down that ice. You're falling down. You're banging. And it's not as physical as it was, to your point, but you're still out there, and it's a physical game. You fall, 230-pound guy falls. That's going to hurt. I just look at it like, everybody should be paid accordingly. If you're out there playing 80 games a year, whether you're a basketball player or a football player or a hockey player, the compensation should be, equal across the board. I mean, you're playing 80 games a year. I mean, look at Major League Baseball. Really not a physical sport, right? And look at the money they're making. We could probably have this debate all day long. I mean, I think we all want to make the most amount of money what we're doing, but we also want to look at quality of life as well. What are these sports? What are these unions in these pro sports? How are they representing their people? And what is their goals? I mean, we go to the table every day to represent our members. We're thinking about how we can get more money so it's easier at the gas pumps, it's easier at the grocery store, how we can get them the best health insurance. More importantly, how do we provide the same style of life that we're used to working when people retire? Is that the focus, or is it just focus on the big contracts?
I think the focus is on the big contracts, frankly. These players now, I mean, I remember even when I was playing, we was making, maybe 110,000, 125,000. I remember sitting in the locker room in Eagleston, to bring his name up again. He was in there, and I said to him something like, at that point, guys like Reggie Fleming and those guys that had played for, $6,000, and they didn't have two nickels to rub together, and they're older, and they didn't have health insurance. It was hard, for those guys. And I remember saying to Eagleston, and again, I was a newish guy. I was like, I think it's a great idea. How about if we, if everybody throws in, 1% of their salary every year into a fund that we can help these guys that came before us, because they didn't make a lot of money and they need help. So how about we help them? The guy just came at me like a Wolverine, yeah, I know you were getting paid in the Olympic team. Yeah, I know you're getting money. I'm going to take your gold medal away. And I was like, what are you talking about? He just started kind of coming at me, and nobody in the locker room backed me. And
coming from the guy that robbed
Bobby Orr and
right,
other
right.
people too, and many others.
Here's a guy that was NHL player rep, right?
Oh.
Then he was a agent at the same time. and then he had another title, and he was
Hold on, he
Robert,
was-
Yeah, he ran the executive committee for the
right,
owners.
Right.
He was Bill Wirtz's lawyer because on the executive committee for the owner. He would also represent Bob Pulford in discussions, who's the GM, and Tony Esposito, who's discussing with Pulford. I mean, he had he was getting his hands are in way too many pies.
And he had a lot of balls questioning his amateur status.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, he just because
Right.
he's a Canadian, right? They hated Americans,
Right.
American hockey players. That being said, but I still think and I believe in this, and I really want to. If I have a chance to talk to Marty Walsh about it, I think we need to do something about enhancing pensions for older retired players. You know, the guys that maybe didn't get into a good career afterwards, or maybe have struggled a little bit, right? And also maybe in the healthcare side, you know, like a lot of guys, you know, they're in their 50s and maybe they played when they weren't making a lot or whatever, and they didn't save as well, or they got divorced. You know, we all know how that works out. At least I do. And
That's another podcast.
that's another podcast. Divorce, yeah.
We'll schedule that one for you,
We'll
Jack.
schedule that one for
I want to
me,
hear
yeah.
all about it.
Yeah, we'll hear all about that one, Sean. You and I'll talk about it. We'll be the 1980 Olympic divorce guys. We'll do that podcast. There's probably 60% of us.
That's a bad idea.
That's a bad idea.
Absolutely.
But anyhow, I just my humble opinion is that I think these players now should definitely look behind them and see some of these people. And try
So you
to
know,
help them.
it's funny. Marty Walsh is a great representative
Yeah, he's great.
for the
gets it.
NHLPA.
Yeah,
Plus,
it's awesome.
you know, he comes out of a labor background,
Right.
and you know, he was a secretary of labor, which is great. The scary part is I've run into not just NHL players, but NFL players. Sean Morey, for instance, jumps out at me. He was Mr. Irrelevant, drafted, I think, out of Brown University. And 26 documented concussions through his career, played 10 years in the NFL, and he was on one of the negotiating committees. And the focus is never on pensions or retirement. And this is according to discussion I had with him. He said, you know, the problem is you get a lot of people that, you know, come from, you know, blue collar backgrounds or less than middle class lifestyles, even still today, and they need that money. They don't care about the pensions. They don't care about the health care because you're only going to do 2 or 3 years in the league. And like he said, he goes, I was fighting for pensions. He says, but the majority of the people that are going to be voting on these collective bargaining agreements are living to make the next team, get the next contract. They're not concerned about the pension. He says, I got 26 documented concussions. I get migraine headaches every day, and I'm not certain I'm going to be able to survive on my pension when I retire. That's kind of a scary scenario for anybody, not just pro athletes, but it's just reflective of what pro sports have become. And I think, you know, if we could echo anything, it's like, look, focus on the retirement, focus on life afterwards. And I always tell my members, look, don't worry about the $2, $3 increases you're going to get year one. Let's take some of that money and put it into a pension where you're going to maintain your same lifestyle as if you were still working. And, you know, unfortunately, that's not the case in pro sports.
Yeah.
Well, especially with the concussion situation now and the suicides that we've seen from former athletes, and they go back and check and see that they had severe cases of CTE.
Well, look at Jack. Look at the American. No, you definitely have CTE.
What's up with that?
No. But think about the young man that played you in the movie.
Yeah. Michael Mentanudo.
Michael Mentanudo played for UMaine.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell the story. I mean, he played for UMaine, and they cast him in my role, and he was a really good-looking kid, which is probably why he's in the movie a lot. Had nothing to do with me. Had everything to do with him. But he did a great job, and he's a good kid. And then when he was done playing, he enlisted in the military. And he did, I think he did 5 or 6 tours.
He was an Army Ranger.
He started out, he did his first 3 tours as an Army Ranger. I think he was in Afghanistan. And then he came home and got repurposed, went back as Army Special Forces.
Yeah.
And then when he came home one night, he just drove off the base after a year or so of being home, and he was not a big guy, and he took his own life. It was pretty terrible.
Which is sad, you know. So
It's terrible.
I mean, there's a lot of that tragedy that goes on,
Yeah.
you know, outside of pro sports and everything else, and we can have that conversation for hours about what needs to happen in this country and where the focus should be.
Right.
What's next, Dave Silk? What's next?
What's next?
I mean, 45 more years. I mean, you're just a kid. What's next?
I'm trying to get to 50. I'm trying to get to that 50.
Make it to 50.
I'm just trying to make it to 50.
To strive for 50.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question. I was one of the leading candidates in the death pool on the team.
That's not.
It seems though you got some
That's
extra
not
innings
true.
recently,
I
which is good.
have some extra innings. Yeah,
That's awesome.
I don't know, living a day at a time and trying to put one foot in front of the other and do the next right thing and all that good stuff, right?
Yeah.
Mike Eurozione,
My grandkids got a game tomorrow.
right? Yeah.
Hope you make
You
it.
got a couple doctor's appointments next
I
week.
got some doctor's appointments. No, for me, that's look at that. Nobody's benefited more from what took place in 1980, I think, than I had and have had. So I'm just going to continue to do the things that I have an opportunity to do. 7 grandkids now, so I'm going to watch their games and just keep living, keep enjoying.
They must be very proud of their grandfather. They realize who their grandfather is.
They figured it out a few years ago because the rink in Winthrop's named after me, and I was always Papa, and now they figured out. Now they want to watch the damn Miracle movie.
They call you Captain?
No, not yet. But it's been fun. The whole thing has been great, and I always say we could have lost. I'd still be living in Winthrop. I'd still be married to the same girl. I'd be maybe coaching and teaching. I'd be very happy. My friends would still be my friends. These guys would be friends for life. My teammates in 1980 will be friends forever, regardless. I mean, the victory was nice, but I think the bond and the friendship that we've had and maintained is a pretty special thing to have and to be a part of.
That's important. Jack,
What am I going to do? Kind of like these guys, I mean, if you look at our team, seriously, guys are pretty fit, I mean, we don't have a lot of guys that have let themselves go. Everybody has stayed kind of involved in the gym and stuff. And I think, I want to live my life on my feet, whatever I have left, and I think just trying to stay fit and trying to pay attention to that. So, I want to be walking around until I go down. And when I go down, I want to be buried in 3 days. So that's it. Stay fit, stay happy, and just try to enjoy whatever we got left.
Jack, I'm going out of this world the way I came in, screaming.
Screaming. That's what I'm saying. I mean, who wants to go out in a wheelchair? Just take me out. That's something we can work on.
I got some unofficial declarations I've made with certain people.
Okay.
We're not going out that way.
Yeah, we're not going out that way. Yeah.
Enjoy it.
I'm just going to continue to fight for working people every single day, try and be the best person, best father, best partner that I can be. And look, I'm a firm believer on fate, and you do good things come your way.
Yeah.
As I was telling these kids today, it's easy to be a nice person.
Yeah.
It's hard to be an asshole.
Yeah, it's very
easy. It's easy to be nice.
Cell phones make it easy to be an asshole.
Well, you get unfiltered
No
device
feedback.
that have
Yeah.
no consequences.
Right.
You know? So
Right.
look, we don't sweat that stuff. I mean, it is what it is. But listen, you guys were huge in my life, in my generation, and whatever we can do to carry on that legacy, because it should never be forgotten. It should be embraced and taught on what you all achieved as a team, but more importantly, what it meant to unite a country that was once divided. And I think we've got the opportunity to do that again.
I remember when Sports Illustrated had us as Sportsman of the Year. E.M. Swift wrote an article about our team, and it was entitled "A Lesson and Message of What We Can Be." And the article didn't talk about goals that were scored. It talked about our character. It talked about the values that we as a team had and the work ethic that we had, which is what this country's all about. And I think that was a perfect description, of what took place in 1980.
Absolutely.
Well, it's a great country. We're fortunate to be part of it. None of us served in the military because we weren't really around. Vietnam was kind of before, but I mean, for wearing that USA jersey and going up there and just playing hard, working hard, and what we eventually achieved and what it meant to people, just kind of, America, everything's cyclical, and I think we're on the upswing now. And I think with the time when we were on the downswing, and we helped things get back. So it's a great country, and we're all, fortunate to be American citizens, and we all love the country, as I know as you do, and as the labor movement in this country. These guys, a lot of them are, military guys, police and firemen, ex-military. Those are the real Americans in my book.
I think this is a great opportunity. I think it's a great opportunity right now.
Yeah.
I think that the thing that we share around this table, to a man, is that we're all part of extraordinary leadership and solidarity, right? Your guys, our team, the ability to bond together and chase a singular goal the way all of us have done and do, makes us pretty lucky, pretty fortunate to be part of that bond, I think.
I think you left one.
right
I
on,
think you
100%.
left one thing out though. We're extremely good looking.
Hey,
I don't know. Maybe at your age.
On a relative basis.
Yeah.
Great.
I mean, we look really good for our age. We look really good for our ages.